Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, MR.Creepy N. So today's video is definitely going to creep you out. In this video, we're getting into some of the most bone-chilling true horror stories that actually happened during brutal snowstorms. The kind of nights where the cold outside was the least terrifying thing going on. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Alright, let's get into tonight's stories. I was 28 when it happened, and my sister Lily had just crawled back from Arizona like the desert had finally spat her out. She'd gone to Flagstaff for the sun, the trails, and some guy who played acoustic guitar at weekend markets and thought that counted as a career. 3 summers later, none of it had stuck. The guy was gone. The novelty of dry heat had worn thin, and by December, she was back in Maine, standing at my door in Millbridge with 2 duffel bags and the audacity to call it temporary. My place was a small duplex, half an hour outside Bangor, drafty in the walls and stubborn in the pipes. Not exactly a refuge, but it was what I had, and she was my sister, so I moved my winter gear off the couch and made room. The timing couldn't have been worse. A storm was coming in, the kind the weather service stops being casual about. I spent Tuesday doing everything right, filled every jug, bottle, and cracked cooler I owned with water in case the pipes gave out, checked the propane, ran the generator out back until I was confident it wouldn't die on me at 3 a.m. I even dug an old wind-up radio out of a kitchen drawer that hadn't been touched since the Obama years, just in case. The kind of preparation that feels almost like a ritual, like if you cover every base, the storm will at least be fair about it. Power went out before 5:30. I set the portable propane heater at the edge of the hallway, where it could push warmth through without gassing us in our sleep. Made canned chili on the gas burner. Lily nested herself inside every blanket I owned and barely surfaced to eat. After dinner, we played cards by candlelight, rummy mostly, and then some game her ex had taught her that neither of us could fully reconstruct from memory. Too many rules, not enough reward. We abandoned it somewhere around 10. She was snoring by 1:15. I wasn't anywhere close to sleep. It wasn't fear. It was that specific, low-grade irritation of a thought you can't quite locate, the mental equivalent of a splinter. You can feel, but can't see. Every few minutes it surfaced and then slipped away before I could name it. I lay there in the dark, while the storm dragged ice across the siding in waves, each gust hitting the house like something with intent, and I couldn't let go of the feeling that I'd left something undone. By 2 in the morning, I finally placed it. The garage, the interior door connecting it to the kitchen, had I latched it from the inside? I couldn't remember doing it. Not a crisis, not even interesting really, just the kind of small domestic negligence that nags at you until you deal with it. I pulled on a sweatshirt, told myself I was being ridiculous, and crossed the kitchen in the dark. I opened the door slowly. Cold air immediately pushed in around my ankles. Expected, the garage was always a few degrees colder. I stood in the frame and scanned the room. Snowblower flush against the left wall. Rock salt bags in a soft, leaning pile at the back. Nothing out of place. I started to reach for the handle. Then I stepped in just a little further and saw the floor. 2 sets of boot prints. They came in from the back service door, the one that opens to the yard, and walked a clean, straight line across the concrete. They stopped less than a foot from where I was standing. That was all. No return prints. No arc of someone turning around. No heel drag. No shuffled exit. No sign of anyone leaving. Just 2 sets of tracks, walking in from the cold and terminating, as if whoever made them had simply stopped existing in the middle of my garage. I stood there, I don't know how long enough to feel the cold settle into my shirt sleeves. Then I stepped back, pulled the door shut, and locked it. Both locks. I didn't wake Lily. I tried rationalization first. It's always cheaper than the alternative. Maybe I'd gone in that morning, moved something, walked out a different way and forgot. But I hadn't been in that garage for a full day, and the thin layer of snow blown in under the back door was fresh, light, barely a dusting, but settled cleanly around the tread marks like a cast. Those prints were recent. made during the storm. While we were inside, I got the aluminum bat from under my bed, old thing, bent slightly from too many summers of backyard use, and walked every room in the house, opened every closet door, checked every window lock. I knocked the attic hatch open with a broom handle and held my phone light up into the crawl space. Nothing but beams and wiring and cold dark. I ended up back in the kitchen with a chair wedged under the garage door handle, staring at the wood and listening to the storm work on the house. I sat there until the sky turned grey. When the wind finally dropped enough to be survivable, I pulled on my boots and shoveled a path around the side of the house to the garage's back door. Snow was knee-deep in stretches. I had to dig a trench just to reach the door frame. When I got there, the snow around the door was untouched. No footprints, no packed-down approach trail, no sign whatsoever that anyone had walked up to that door from the outside. But there was something wedged between the door frame and the rubber seal, a folded piece of receipt paper, thin enough to almost miss entirely. I pulled it out. It was from McCrae's Market, a grocery store over in Ellsworth that had closed down a couple of years back. On the blank side, in handwriting that looked slightly unsteady, someone had written a full name I didn't recognize and a 10-digit phone number. I read it 3 times, standing in the snow. Inside, I used the callback dummy line from my job, a number we gave customers so they couldn't reach us directly, and dialed. It rang 6 times, then it connected to something that wasn't a voicemail, a flat, broken audio tone. Not static exactly, more like a signal that had been interrupted mid-transmission and never finished dying. I hung up, folded the receipt, said nothing to Lily. She came downstairs around noon wrapped in a blanket and looking for coffee I didn't own. We talked about ordinary things. Eventually I asked, as casually as I could manage, whether she'd heard anything strange during the night. She thought about it. No, she said, then paused, rubbed the back of her neck. Well, I thought I heard someone walking around upstairs. After midnight. I figured it was you. There is no upstairs. It's a single-story duplex. The attic above us is raw crawl space. No flooring, no insulation. Just exposed wiring and structural beams. You couldn't walk through it. There was nothing up there capable of making footsteps. That afternoon, with the sun out and some thin version of my nerve restored, I went back into the garage and checked everything. Every bin, every cabinet, every shelf. I tipped the recycling tub over. I went through the toolboxes, one by one. Then I opened the deep freezer in the corner. We'd emptied it the week before because the door seal had started failing. I hadn't restocked it. I was certain it was empty. It wasn't. I didn't sleep that night. I packed a bag instead. By the end, I was 32 years old, and I thought a weekend alone in a snowstorm was easy money. I'd worked seasonal maintenance at Marlow Ridge State Park for a few years by then. Trail cleanup, facilities checks, the kind of outdoor work that keeps you sane, if not wealthy. When they posted the voluntary storm weekend shift with overtime pay, I signed up without hesitation. The park was closed to visitors during weather events like this. The cabin was solid and stopped. I'd stayed through worse. It was supposed to be 2 quiet days of generator checks and radio monitoring. Just me, the snow, and a thermos I planned to refill every few hours. By Friday afternoon, the other rangers had already cleared out, racing the ice on the service road. I watched the last truck disappear into the tree line and felt nothing, except the particular satisfaction of having a place entirely to yourself. I ran my pre-storm checks methodically. Generator confirmed. Backup heaters confirmed. Food and water confirmed. Radio on low for company. The wind was already picking up by the time I came back inside. I double-locked the door, made something hot to eat, and told myself it would be an unremarkable night. I still believed that at 9 o'clock, right up until the motion light outside clicked on. That light wasn't triggered by trees or wind. I'd set it off myself enough times to know it required something close and deliberate to activate it. I looked up from the table and saw it burning white through the window. I told myself deer. I told myself fox. Then I stood up and actually looked. Footprints in the snow, small ones, uneven, leading up the path and stopping at the base of the front steps like whoever made them had paused there, deciding. I pulled on my coat and opened the door. She was standing just below the top step. 7, maybe 8 years old. Light purple sweater, black leggings, bare feet in 6 inches of snow. No coat, no boots, nothing between her skin and the cold that had been building since noon. Her hair was soaked flat to her forehead. Her cheeks had gone the kind of pale that doesn't happen from just a few minutes outside. She'd been out in this for a while. I didn't feel fear in that first moment. I felt confusion so complete it almost passed for calm. The service road in was iced over. There were no cars, no tracks on the road itself. Nothing to explain how a child in a sweater had appeared on my porch during a closed park blizzard at 9 at night. I stepped toward her and asked if she was okay. She looked up at me. Her eyes were flat and patient in a way I didn't have language for yet. Not frightened, not confused, just still, like she'd been waiting for me to open that door for some time. Then she said quietly, "Can I come in?" No distress, no urgency, the tone of someone asking for the time. I asked her name, nothing. Just the same words again, same flat delivery. "Can I come in?" My brain locked onto hypothermia, disorientation, emotional blunting, the way severe cold strips expression from her face. She was a child standing barefoot in a blizzard. I stepped aside and let her in. The moment she crossed the threshold, every light in the cabin went out. Not a flicker, not a fade. All at once, like something had reached into the wall and pulled a fist around the wiring. The generator outside stopped mid-hum. The radio cut to absolute silence, not static, just nothing, where sound used to be. She didn't react, didn't flinch or look around, just walked through the dark like she'd memorized the layout, and sat down cross-legged on the floor in front of the cold stove, hands in her lap, perfectly still. I got the emergency lantern and lit it, set it beside her. The light caught her eyes in a way that made me look twice. Too bright, too glassy. The reflection sitting somewhere behind the surface rather than on it. I told myself, shock. I told myself, ice in her lashes. I wasn't thinking in straight lines. I checked the fuse box, nothing wrong. Went outside to the generator, still warm, no ice blockage, no visible reason to be off. Tried to start it twice, nothing both times. When I came back inside, she hadn't moved a single inch. I wrapped thermal blankets around her shoulders and crouched down in front of her, asked as evenly as I could manage if she knew where her parents were. She stared at the lantern flame without blinking. Then, almost under her breath, she said, "They're coming." Not scared, not relieved, just a flat, casual statement, like commenting on weather that was already on its way. After that, she didn't speak again. The next hour was the longest I've ever spent doing nothing. I checked the windows repeatedly, but the snow was falling so thick, the porch was just a white blur. My phone had no signal, no matter where I stood. I made instant soup around 11 and put a steaming cup in front of her. She didn't glance at it. I watched her for a long time after that, waiting for any ordinary human signal. A shiver, a swallow, the baseline blink rate of a cold and frightened child. I got none of it. Just before midnight, I opened the door to check snow build up on the steps and looked down at the path. Her footprints were gone, not filled in by fresh snow, erased. The ground between the tree line and the steps was a single unbroken plane, smooth and untouched, as if nothing had walked across it all night. I stood in the doorway for a long moment and didn't go back to the table. Around midnight, headlights appeared through the trees. A black SUV crawled up the service road. No park markings, no emergency lights, no decals of any kind. Just low, steady beams moving slowly through the snow. It stopped a few feet from the porch and idled. Nobody got out. I grabbed my coat and opened the door. When I turned to tell her to stay put, she was already standing beside me. No sound of movement, no footsteps. Just there, at the threshold, looking out at the vehicle like she'd been expecting it since before I let her in. She stepped off the porch barefoot and walked toward it through the snow. The passenger door swung open before she reached it. Slow, deliberate, pulled from inside. I leaned forward and looked through the dark windshield. The driver's seat was empty. No silhouette, no dashboard light, just darkness inside the cab, deep and total. She climbed in without looking back. The door pulled itself shut. The SUV reversed in a clean arc, turned, and moved back down the trail. The headlights went off before it cleared the first bend. I watched until the trees took it, and there was nothing left to watch. Just before dawn, everything came back on simultaneously. Lights, radio, generator, all of it at once, like a switch thrown by something that had finished with whatever it came to do. My phone buzzed with a stack of backed-up weather alerts, all routine, all ordinary. I called the ranger station at 7, kept it simple. Kid got separated from hikers, someone picked her up. They logged it and moved on. That was my last winter shift at Marlow Ridge. I transferred to spring maintenance the following week, and never explained why. Some things you file away and eventually stop reaching for. The sound of that SUV door opening before she touched it. I haven't filed that one yet. I'm not sure I ever will. The house was beautiful in photographs. In person, in early winter, with the trees stripped bare and the sky sitting low and grey above the tree line, it felt like the last place anyone would choose to be alone. I was 24, doing my cousin Mara a favour. She'd just gotten tenure at a small college and had a teaching seminar out in Montana, professional development, the kind of thing you can't reschedule. Her place was a renovated A-frame in northern Vermont, deep past St. Albans, close enough to the Canadian border that your phone carrier occasionally switched flags on you without warning. Her ex-partner had fixed it up before they split. Wood stove, high ceilings, wide glass panels facing the trees. She called it cozy. I called it isolated. But she had a dog named Juniper, a shaggy little mutt with strong opinions about couch real estate, and the idea of a few quiet days buried in snow with a stack of books didn't sound terrible. Mara told me to stock up before the storm hit. The nearest real grocery store was nearly an hour out, and the general store a few miles off the main road sold more hunting licenses than actual food. I loaded up on Monday, drove into the first light snowfall, and watched the trees close in around the road behind me. The storm arrived late on my second night. It started as flurries, the pretty kind, falling slow through the big living room window, while I made pasta and watched Juniper spin circles on the floor. But by the time I turned in, the wind had found the chimney and was running its fingers through it, making that low, hollow moan that old houses specialize in. Not frightening, just relentless, like something that had decided to make a point. I woke to a world that had been replaced overnight. The driveway had disappeared under a seamless sheet of white. Snow was stacked halfway up the porch rails, and the stairs to the yard were just a suggestion under the drift. The sky had that specific heavy grey that means the storm is resting, not finished. I made coffee, pulled a blanket around my shoulders, settled onto the couch with Juniper warm against my leg, and put on a DVD with the volume low. Then, just after noon, someone knocked. 3 sharp raps, fast, deliberate, evenly spaced, the knock of someone who expected an answer. Juniper was on her feet before I processed what I'd heard, every muscle in her small body rigid. I sat still for a moment, telling myself the storm had been throwing sounds at the windows all morning that brains manufacture patterns from noise. Then it came again, same 3 knocks, same pace. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. A man, on the porch. He was standing just far enough back that the overhang let his face half in shadow. Hood up, grey parka, dark jeans soaked through from the knees down, boots sunk into the snow he hadn't bothered to stomp off. That was the detail that sat wrong. It was cold enough that standing still hurt. Most people shuffle their feet, shift their weight, do something involuntary just to keep the blood moving. He wasn't doing any of that, just standing, waiting. When he noticed the peephole shift, he tilted his head slightly and smiled. I didn't move away from the door fast enough. He knocked again, slower this time, patient, like he knew exactly where I was standing. He got a phone, muffled through the door, but clear enough. Car slid off down the road. Just need to call a tow. It was plausible. There was a sharp bend about a mile back where the road dropped and curved fast, the kind of corner that catches you off guard if you're not used to mountain driving in ice. I'd nearly clipped it myself coming in, so the story wasn't impossible. But something about his voice bothered me in a way I couldn't immediately name. He wasn't nervous, wasn't cold sounding, Wasn't frustrated the way a person actually stranded in a blizzard would be. He sounded calm in the specific way of someone who already knows how the conversation ends. "No signal," I said through the door. "Lines are down too. A beat. Then, can I come in, just to warm up? I won't stay long." Politey, reasonable, completely confident. "No," I said. "I'm sorry, I can't do that." He didn't argue, didn't push back or negotiate or appeal to basic human decency the way someone genuinely stranded might. He just stood there. I counted the seconds without meaning to. 4, 5, 6. Then he turned, stepped off the porch, and moved into the yard. I crossed to the side window and watched him through the glass. He wasn't heading for the road. He was moving along the perimeter of the house, slow and deliberate, cutting through the snow in a wide arc, not looking in the windows. That would have been almost easier to categorize. He was just walking the line of the house the way someone does when they're assessing a structure, taking stock of it, noting the exits. I grabbed Juniper, checked the back door, locked, deadbolt thrown, and turned off every light except the kitchen. Then I sat down in the hallway with the bat from the closet across my knees and waited. He didn't come back to the front. No more knocks, no voice, no shadow moving past the glass. Just the storm and the wind and the sound of my own breathing. The afternoon crawled by in a state of suspended alertness that's exhausting in a way that's hard to describe. You can't relax, but nothing keeps happening, so your body can't decide whether to stand down or stay coiled. Juniper didn't leave my side. At some point, I thought I heard something shift on the roof, a creak, a drag, but I told myself it was snow settling and half believed it. That night, I didn't go upstairs. I dozed on the couch, in short, shallow stretches, with the TV running static in the background. Juniper growled softly at intervals, always when the wind changed direction, and each time I was fully awake before the sound finished leaving her throat. At almost exactly 2 a.m, the back door handle moved. One slow rotation, testing the resistance. Then stillness. I didn't breathe. Then the tapping started on the kitchen window above the sink. Not loud, not aggressive, just a single finger keeping a steady, unhurried rhythm against the glass. Tap, 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 tap. The same interval every time. The way a person taps when they're not trying to alarm you, when they want you to know they're simply still there. I was in the hallway with the bat before I knew I'd stood up. Juniper pressed against my calf, ears flat, not making a sound. I crouched there for what felt like a very long time. Eventually the tapping stopped. I waited another 30 minutes before I trusted the silence enough to move. When I finally looked through the kitchen window, there was no one there. But in the snow directly below the glass there were footprints. Bare feet. No boots. No covering of any kind. You could see the individual toe impressions. They came out of the tree line in a straight path to the back door, and then turned and went back into the trees the same way they had come. I left every light on for the rest of the night. When the plows finally cleared enough road to make the drive survivable, I loaded Juniper into the car and drove directly to the sheriff's office in town. Deputy Mercer came back out with me, walked the property, checked the perimeter, professional, thorough, kind about it. He didn't find anything. I gave Mara's spare key back when she returned and told her the storm had been rougher than expected. She thanked me for watching the dog. I didn't tell her the rest. Some things don't improve by being said out loud. They just become someone else's problem to carry. I already had enough trouble sleeping on my own. The storm was already serious by the time I clocked out, and 3 of my coworkers, Jake, Sal, and this quiet new guy named Theo, who never took his headphones off, told me to just stay the night. They'd already unrolled mats near the break area, and were debating which frozen pizza to heat up first. I stood there for a second, genuinely considered it, and then picked up my keys. I had a week off, and a rented cabin, 40 minutes north, and no version of me was spending the first night of it on a warehouse floor, next to a humming vending machine. That was the whole pattern I was trying to break, settling for the convenient, uglier option, because it was easier than following through. Not this time. I'd found the place online 2 weeks earlier, A small A-frame of a barely paved access road outside Carver's Ridge. No Wi-Fi, next to no cell signal. A wood stove the listing called characterful. Perfect. I'd been running on too many consecutive days of buzzing overhead lights and recycled conversations, and I needed silence bad enough to drive into a snowstorm to find it. The first stretch of highway was peaceful almost. Heat on full, some long ambient playlist going, soft piano, wind chimes, the kind of music that feels excessive at home, but exactly right on a dark, empty road. Then, about 20 minutes in, the storm stopped being scenery and became the whole environment. Thick, heavy flakes hammering the windshield in waves, turning my headlights into soft, useless smears. I dropped my speed and leaned forward like that would somehow help me see better. It didn't. That's probably when I took the wrong turn. It couldn't have been more than a few degrees off the right route. But in a whiteout, a few degrees is everything. One moment I was passing the wooden mailboxes I'd memorized from my scouting drive, and the next my headlights were hitting a dead end, downed branches, broken ground, and what looked like the edge of a small ravine disappearing into dark. No signage, nothing familiar. I reversed and tried to reorient. That's when the side road caught my eye. It branched left, and what stopped me was the condition of it. Freshly plowed, multiple passes, clean down to the gravel edge. Every other road I'd passed that night was buried or barely scraped through. This one looked actively maintained. I figured it had to connect somewhere useful. A lodge, a ranger station, private property with a plow contract. I checked my phone. No signal. GPS. Locked on a loading screen, with no intention of moving. Sitting still in a worsting storm wasn't a real plan, so I turned left and drove in, hoping for a loop or turn-off that would push me back toward the highway. The road went on much longer than it should have. No lights, no markers, just dense trees pressing both shoulders and the occasional fence post ghosting up through the snow. A couple miles in, I spotted tire tracks, one set, partly filled, but recent. A little further, a rusted gate hanging wide open off a single hinge, the kind of open that looks less like an invitation and more like someone left in a hurry. Past the gate was a clearing, 4 or 5 large concrete buildings arranged in a rough cluster. Plain, low, functional in the deliberate way of things designed by committee, with no interest in comfort. It had the bones of a state facility, or maybe an old institutional camp from the 70s. Most windows were boarded, a few smashed through the boards. Paint had peeled off the exterior walls in long, curling strips, leaving raw concrete underneath. The signage had been stripped, leaving pale rectangular outlines on the walls where the letters used to be. But it didn't feel abandoned. That was the thing that I couldn't shake as I sat there with the engine idling. Abandoned places settle into themselves. The silence becomes structural. Everything tilts slightly toward decay. This place felt different. It felt like a pause, like people had stepped into the next room and would be back shortly. I parked near the smallest building, closest to the gate, probably an admin office or visitor intake at some point. The wind had eased to a low, continuous roar. I got out, tried my phone one more time, watched it search and give up. Snow was already softening my tire tracks in the lot. I told myself someone might be running it as a winter emergency station. At minimum, I could get out of the cold and wait out the worst of the storm. The front door wasn't locked. It swung open with the slow, heavy resistance of a door that sees irregular use, not seized, just unaccustomed. The air inside smelled like old carpet and cardboard, dry and stale, but still and out of the wind. A dusty foyer, broken chairs along one wall, a cracked vending machine with a shattered plastic front. Past that, a larger room with the layout of a visitor check-in area, papers still pinned to a bulletin board, yellowed to the color of old newsprint. Off to the right, a small room, wide desk, cracked window facing the lot, a security booth. Inside, a battered swivel chair, a few empty water bottles kicked under the desk, and a space heater plugged into the wall outlet. I reached down and flipped the switch without expecting much. It came on immediately. Warm air pushed against my shins. I sat down, unzipped my bag, and pulled out the sandwich I'd packed for the cabin. Gave myself permission to just stop moving for a minute. The plan was clean and simple. Warm up, wait for visibility to ease, drive out. The heater hummed steadily. The building held its strange, airless quiet, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful but pressurized, where your brain starts manufacturing sounds just to relieve the tension. Then I heard the voices. I told myself it was the heater, some rattle or resonance in the metal housing, but I reached down and switched it off, and the voices got sharper. 2 men, maybe more in the distance, not raised, not alarmed, just talking in the low, practical tone of people working through familiar logistics. Don't want to drag them out there, not while it's still light. A pause. Another voice, noticeably closer than the first. Doesn't matter. If someone sees tracks, that's worse. What about the car? It's new. That's not local. The first voice, without any hesitation at all. Then we deal with it like the others. Like the others. I didn't think. My body was already moving, sliding off the chair, dropping behind the desk, pulling my backpack against my chest. The booth window was fogged solid from the outside. I couldn't see out, but I could hear footsteps in the corridor. Steady, unhurried. The sound of people who weren't searching yet, just moving with purpose through a building they knew well. A hallway door opened somewhere close. The floorboards just outside the booth groaned under shifting weight. Then boots, right on the other side of the desk, close enough that I could hear the creak of a knee bending. A man's voice, quiet and certain. This one's not empty. Farther back the second. You sure? Door's warm. Heater's been running. I didn't wait for anything else. I grabbed the backpack strap, pushed off the floor, and went for the side door. My foot caught something on the threshold. I never saw what, and I went down hard on the icy steps, catching myself on my left hand. The cold hit it like a hammer. Instant numbness from the wrist down. I didn't stop. I ran across the lot low and fast, cutting between buildings, hitting an ice patch, and barely staying upright, ducking under what used to be a covered walkway between 2 of the structures. Behind me, one of them shouted. The wind pulled the words apart before they reached me. My car was gone as an option. So I did the only thing left. I ran straight into the tree line and let the dark take me. The snow was knee-deep in stretches, uneven underneath, the kind that has a crust that holds for one step and collapses on the next. My left hand was still mostly numb, hanging at my side while I pumped my right arm and tried to keep my footing. I locked onto the sound of a creek I'd glimpsed through the trees on the approach, water still moving faintly under a skin of ice somewhere ahead. I followed that sound and kept following it until following it was the only thought I had room for. Eventually, I found a utility shed near a collapsed fence line. The door had a chain looped through the handle. No padlock. I pulled it open, stepped into the dark, and drew the chain closed behind me. Rusted hand tools on a pegboard, a crushed stack of cardboard boxes in the corner. Nothing useful, but walls, a roof. I folded myself into the far corner, kept my breathing shallow, and waited. I stayed until the light outside the door crack went fully black. At some point, exhaustion overruled everything else. I woke up with stiff legs and burning fingers and the particular confusion of not immediately knowing where you are or how you got there. But the wind had quit. The woods were completely still. I slipped out and moved west, keeping slow and close to the tree line. It took a long time before I saw the 2-lane road and the amber pulse of a snowplow working through the dark ahead. The driver took one look at me and didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't offer one. At the sheriff's office, I sat across a desk from a deputy named Holt and told him everything. The plowed road, the gate, the concrete buildings, the voices, the specific words I couldn't stop hearing. He listened with the measured patience of someone who had already decided where the conversation was going before I finished a single sentence. He told me the road I described didn't exist on any county record, so the only structure out that direction was a decommissioned correctional facility that had been closed and partially burned years back. Said the access road had been removed from all maps entirely. I asked if I could show him. He told me to go home, get some sleep, and come back when I was thinking more clearly. I went home. I didn't sleep. I pulled up every satellite map I could find and traced the route from memory until my eyes gave out. I never found the road. I never found the buildings. I never found the gate. But someone plowed that road, plowed it thoroughly recently, in both directions, like they were expecting vehicles and didn't want anyone getting stuck on the way in. I think about that detail more than the voices, more than the words themselves, more than what they meant by the others. Someone maintained that road. Someone wanted it easy to find and easy to use. I just wasn't supposed to be the one who found it.